I still remember the day it all began, standing on the sprawling tarmac, watching the sleek lines of a private jet glimmer under the midday sun. My heart hammered in my chest, not out of fear, but from an electrifying sense of possibility. This wasn't just any jet. It was my husband's, a billionaire's prized possession, and I was about to board it for the very first time. Let me tell you, it's one thing to read about lavish lifestyles in magazines or scroll through glamorous photos on social media, but it's an entirely different experience to feel the luxurious leather seats under your fingertips and sense the hush of a flight crew poised to meet your every need. Stepping onto the jet, I felt like I'd walked into a different universe. Polished wood paneling, plush carpets, and oversized windows greeted me with a regal invitation. My husband, let's call him Adrian, looked every inch the billionaire he was, dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe combined. He caught my awed expression and offered me the slightest smile, a knowing look that said, "Yes, it's real, and I want you to experience it fully." Before this moment, my life was fairly ordinary by most standards. I held a steady job in marketing, made decent money, and enjoyed the usual weekend brunches with friends. I never believed I would ever live in a world of private jets, five-star hotels, or couture outfits custom-fitted to my measurements. Then Adrian came into my life, and everything changed. Within 6 months of dating, we were engaged, and I soon discovered the full extent of his wealth. To say it was overwhelming is an understatement. Imagine the biggest number you can think of, then multiply it. It still wouldn't approach the magnitude of his portfolio. But here's the twist. Adrian didn't just want me to observe this opulence. He insisted I learn from it. "I want you to see how millionaires or even billionaires live, so you can decide for yourself how to shape your life," he said, his voice quiet yet charged with a confidence that put me at ease. That was how our grand experiment was born. For a week, I would fully immerse myself in living like a millionaire. We dubbed it my Millionaire Mentorship. My role: soak up every insight, every lesson, every nuance, and then share it with the world. Now, as we settled into the sumptuous seats, I began to wonder, what's the biggest difference between my old life and this new one? The perks were obvious: private jets, personal chefs, endless travel. Yet Adrian hinted that the difference went deeper than material luxuries. "It's not about what you have," he'd told me more than once. "It's about how you think." A true millionaire mindset isn't tied to the money in your bank account. It's tied to your perspective on time, risk, value, and the future. The next week, I would be living with a private staff, attending exclusive events, exploring real estate opportunities, and shadowing Adrian in his daily business dealings. It all sounded surreal. Truth be told, I was both exhilarated and terrified. What if I couldn't handle it? What if I didn't belong in this world? Though the plane was steady as we took off, my thoughts were a whirlwind. After settling into my seat, I clicked on the overhead reading lamp and started scribbling in my journal. Adrian leaned over, curious. "I'm writing down my expectations," I admitted. "I want to see how they stack up against reality at the end of the week." He nodded, satisfied. "That's exactly the kind of initiative I admire," he said, pressing a gentle kiss to my forehead. The moment felt cinematic, like the opening scene of a blockbuster film, except this was my life, and there was no script. The pilot announced our flight path, and we soared high above the clouds. With each passing minute, I felt the weight of the experiment grow. I was about to find out that the real difference between my old life and a millionaire's wasn't just the number of zeros on a paycheck, but the mindset, the priorities, and the fearless approach to opportunity. This is the story of how my billionaire husband taught me to live like a millionaire. Over the coming days, I discovered that what truly sets wealthy individuals apart isn't just access to jets or mansions. It's the way they perceive risk, plan for the future, and leverage every moment to its fullest. But before I can dive into the lessons, let's begin this journey the way it deserves, with a dramatic reveal and a question for you, the curious bystander. If you were handed the keys to a millionaire's lifestyle for a week, what do you think would change for you? Because for me, as I was about to find out, it was everything. The first stop on my week-long tour of opulence was a mansion that could be best described as regal. Think a grand staircase that spiraled upward like something out of a fairy tale, marble floors that shimmered under chandeliers imported from Italy, and an entryway large enough to be its own ballroom. As we stepped through the massive double doors so heavy I could barely push one side alone, I felt my heart rate spike. Every inch of this place spoke of wealth and status, and though I was married to its owner, I still felt like an outsider peering in. Adrian had arranged for a small welcome gathering, a mini introduction to the staff who would be assisting me all week. I had never been in a position where people were on my payroll, yet here I was, greeted by a personal chef named Simone, a nutritionist named Marie, a driver named Antonio, and two housekeepers who introduced themselves with warm smiles. Their names and faces whirled around in my mind, a swirl of new responsibilities and new connections. Adrian noticed my anxious glance and gently squeezed my hand. "This team is here to support you," he whispered. "Don't be shy about asking for what you need." Despite my initial hesitation, I quickly realized the staff was friendly and genuinely enthusiastic about helping. Simone, the chef, immediately launched into a rundown of possible meal plans, from gourmet French cuisine to detox smoothies. For a moment, I felt almost guilty. How could I have someone plan every meal of my day for an entire week? But this was part of the immersion, part of learning how millionaires often structure their time around higher value tasks and delegate everything else. Once the introductions were done, Marie escorted me to a private lounge overlooking the estate. The view was breathtaking: manicured gardens, an infinity pool stretching to meet the horizon, and beyond that, rolling hills bathed in the late afternoon sun. I was starting to understand why people chase this kind of lifestyle. The peace and comfort it offered felt almost otherworldly. Marie explained her role in precise detail. "I'm here to ensure your health is optimized for success," she said, handing me a tailored nutrition and exercise plan. "We'll focus on nourishing your body with the best foods, managing your energy levels, and integrating activity into your day without overwhelming your schedule." The notion of having someone meticulously tailor a plan for my physical well-being felt both luxurious and oddly comforting. In my usual life, I was the queen of last-minute takeout. Here, an entire staff was devoted to making sure I ate, slept, and exercised in the best possible way. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, we gathered in a spacious living room for a relaxed evening. Adrian and I settled on a velvet couch that practically swallowed me in its lush fabric. A fire crackled in the massive stone fireplace, casting dancing shadows across the room. The staff had retreated to give us privacy, leaving behind a spread of appetizers that looked like edible works of art. I turned to Adrian, my voice subdued. "Is this how you live all the time?" I asked, gesturing vaguely to the lavish surroundings. He chuckled. "Not exactly. I travel so often for business that I'm rarely here to enjoy it. But this is how I can live if I choose. The real key is knowing what to prioritize and delegating the rest. That's step one in living like a millionaire, focusing on what truly matters to you and not feeling guilty about outsourcing the rest." I chewed on his words along with a bite of caviar-topped blini. If there was one thing I was already learning, it was that wealth offers options. It allows you to structure your life according to your own values and not be bound by mundane tasks or limiting circumstances. But with options also comes responsibility, to yourself, to your vision, and to those who work for you. It was a lot to digest, and not just in a literal sense. As the night drew to a close, I felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation for the week ahead. Tomorrow would bring new lessons, new experiences, like private shopping sessions and business meetings with Adrian's partners. There was talk of a real estate tour, exploring both commercial and luxury residential properties. I could feel my world expanding by the second. For someone who had never ventured beyond a stable 9-to-5 job, this was a crash course in wealth, comfort, and the strategies that built them. In the stillness of the evening, I found myself staring at the flickering flames in the fireplace. I wondered if 1 week was enough time to internalize all that I was about to learn. Probably not, but it was a start. And something told me that by the time this was over, I wouldn't just know how millionaires live. I'd have a deeper understanding of why they live that way. The next morning began with the gentle hum of an electric curtain opener. Yes, a device literally designed to reveal the morning sun with dignified elegance. As I stretched out on the massive bed, I felt a surreal sense of peace and possibility. Simone had texted me that breakfast was ready whenever I wanted it. Now, that alone was a treat for someone whose usual mornings involved frantic alarm snoozing and hastily poured cereal. Eventually, I made my way down to a sunlit terrace where a spectacular breakfast buffet awaited. Fresh fruit platters, fluffy omelets, green smoothies, and pastries that smelled of warm butter and sugar. Adrian was already seated, typing away on his tablet. He looked up with a smile, one that said, "Welcome to your new morning routine, if you choose it." After brief pleasantries, I decided it was time for that promised interview. I wanted to capture his thoughts on the millionaire mindset before the day's flurry of events swept us away. I set my phone on a small tripod and pressed record. Adrian, ever the composed businessman, leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. "So," I began, trying to sound confident, "you've often told me that being a millionaire or even a billionaire isn't just about the money. Can you elaborate?" He nodded thoughtfully. "Most people assume it's purely about a high number in a bank account. But wealth, in my experience, is much more a function of mindset. True wealth allows you the freedom to choose how you spend your time, what problems you solve, and how you impact the world. The money is just a tool. It's not the destination." "But isn't it also about strategy?" I pressed. "For example, how you invest or build businesses?" "Absolutely. Strategy matters. You can't become wealthy without a plan, without investing, creating businesses, or leveraging opportunities. But before strategy, there's belief. You have to believe you're capable of doing something extraordinary, otherwise no strategy in the world will help." I let that sink in. He was describing a blend of confidence, vision, and execution. It made sense. People who become millionaires or billionaires do so because they spot opportunities others don't, and they have the courage to act. "So how do you handle risk?" I asked next, looking for a concrete example of this mindset at work. A subtle smile played across Adrian's lips. "I don't see risk as something to be avoided. I see it as something to be managed. There's risk in everything: crossing the street, driving a car, even eating certain foods. Wealthy individuals tend to take calculated risks. They do their homework, they look at worst-case scenarios, and then they proceed if the potential reward outweighs the risk. It's about data, intuition, and knowing your own limits." He paused, taking a sip of coffee. "The difference between someone who remains in a comfortable but limiting life and someone who grows their wealth is often how they interpret the word risk. One sees it as an automatic stop sign, the other sees it as a gateway to growth." I nodded, realizing how much this explained his success. Adrian was the kind of person who didn't freeze in the face of uncertainty. Instead, he used it as motivation to learn more, to adapt, to push forward. If something didn't work out, he pivoted quickly without the crippling fear of failure that many of us experience. We continued the interview for another half hour, delving into topics like delayed gratification, the importance of reinvesting profits, and the role of innovation in staying ahead. One particular quote stuck with me. "The real currency of millionaires isn't dollars, it's time and relationships. Money just buys you more of both." That statement lingered in my mind like a puzzle piece waiting to fit into a bigger picture. Suddenly, everything from the staff who managed daily tasks to the private jet that saved travel time clicked into place. It was all about optimizing resources so that the truly important things, creating value, spending time with loved ones, or pursuing passions, received the lion's share of attention. After we wrapped up the interview, I felt a renewed sense of purpose for the week ahead. This wasn't just a frivolous foray into high-end living. It was a chance to see how wealth, when approached with the right mindset, could be a tool for greater achievements. Adrian's words opened my eyes to the possibility that living like a millionaire wasn't just about extravagance. It was about structuring life in a way that aligned with core values, freed up time for what mattered most, and fueled continual growth. Looking at my notes, I realized I already had enough material for a small essay, but I knew the real learning would come from immersion, doing, not just hearing. And so I finished my last forkful of omelet, ready to see how these principles unfolded throughout the day. We had a jam-packed schedule: a visit to a luxury car showroom, a meeting with Adrian's venture capital associates, and a private shopping session that Simone had arranged. Each activity promised a glimpse into the inner workings of a millionaire's world. More importantly, each was a chance to apply the mindset Adrian had just described, to see if I could start thinking in terms of opportunity, strategy, and value creation. I was determined to make the most of it, to absorb every lesson and, hopefully, mold it to fit my own dreams. With a quick farewell to the staff, we headed out, stepping into a sleek black SUV waiting at the mansion's circular drive. As the engine purred to life, I found myself replaying Adrian's words in my head. The real currency is time and relationships. I vowed to keep that in focus throughout the day, reminding myself that what I was truly learning here went far beyond luxury for luxury's sake. Little did I know, I was about to see firsthand how millionaires use their resources to shape not just their own lives, but the world around them. Stepping into the luxury car showroom felt like stepping onto another planet, a planet where automotive design transcended mere transportation and became an art form. The sleek lines, custom finishes, and eye-popping price tags gave me a momentary sense of disorientation. Could a car really cost more than what some people pay for a house? And yet, there they were. Gleaming Bugattis, streamlined Lamborghinis, and stately Rolls-Royces, all lined up in a row like thoroughbreds waiting for their next race. Adrian walked through the showroom with an air of familiarity. He was on first-name terms with the sales manager, who greeted him warmly and immediately offered us a private tour. As we strolled among these mechanical masterpieces, Adrian shared a tidbit that caught my attention. You might think millionaires buy cars on impulse, but the truth is, many of them view cars as assets if they're rare, collectible, or limited edition. It's not purely indulgence, it can be a strategic investment. Of course, the depreciation factor of most cars is a real thing, but for a select few models, values can rise over time, especially if the owner knows the market. We ended the tour with a test drive of a limited edition Aston Martin. I couldn't deny the thrill coursing through me as the engine roared. My typical car was a modest sedan that I was still paying off, so feeling the grip of top-tier tires on the highway was both exhilarating and surreal. By the time we returned to the showroom, my heart was pounding. Was it practical? No. Was it a rush? Undeniably yes. Adrian thanked the manager for his time and left with a promise to come back soon, which I knew was code for, I'm still deciding if I want to add to my collection. This was a side of millionaire living I'd only ever seen on YouTube. Now, I was living it. Next, we raced across the city to meet a group of Adrian's venture capital associates at a high-rise office downtown. The building itself oozed sophistication with glass walls providing panoramic views of the skyline. In the boardroom, a group of impeccably dressed individuals welcomed us. I took a seat at the long, polished table, trying to steady my nerves. This wasn't a casual meet and greet. It was a briefing on a new tech startup that Adrian and his associates were considering funding. The presentation was concise and data-driven, focusing on projected market growth, the startup's leadership team, and potential exit strategies. One thing that struck me was how quickly these investors evaluated opportunities. Within minutes, they homed in on potential weaknesses in the business model, asked pointed questions about scalability, and scrutinized the founder's track record. It was clear they were used to high stakes and big returns. After the presentation, they debated the pros and cons, some leaning toward immediate investment, others suggesting a wait-and-see approach. Eventually, they agreed to conduct further due diligence. But the entire atmosphere was one of forward momentum, no idle chatter, no time wasted. Observing Adrian in this environment was eye-opening. He wasn't just a man who enjoyed luxury, he was a strategist, weighing every opportunity in terms of risk, reward, and impact. It dawned on me that for people like him, money was a means to drive innovation and growth. Sure, luxurious toys and extravagant homes were part of the package, but so was funding ideas that could shape the future. This side of the millionaire lifestyle, using capital to forge new paths, was something the tabloids rarely emphasize. By late afternoon, we headed to our final destination, a private shopping session at an upscale boutique. This was Simone's arrangement, part of my immersive experience. When we arrived, the boutique was closed to the public, and a personal stylist greeted me like we were old friends. My initial discomfort melted away in the face of her genuine warmth. She guided me through racks of designer clothing and accessories, explaining the nuances of fit, fabric, and craftsmanship. It felt decadent, but also strangely enlightening. Every stitch, every button, every piece of fabric was curated for a certain look, a certain level of quality. Suddenly, clothing wasn't just clothing, it was an extension of identity and brand. I tried on a few dresses, each more stunning than the last. As I admired myself in the mirror, I noticed Adrian watching from one of the plush chairs. His eyes held pride, but also a deeper appreciation. Later, he told me, clothes can be an investment too, especially classic pieces that stand the test of time. It's not about showing off, it's about presenting your best self to the world, and sometimes that matters in high-stakes business. We left the boutique with a curated selection of items. I never imagined I'd own a designer handbag or walk out wearing a custom-tailored suit jacket, but there I was. It was a surreal feeling, blending the practical lessons of the day with these splashes of luxury. Far from just indulging, I was beginning to see how each aspect, cars, clothes, even the choice of meeting spaces, was a reflection of values, strategy, and image in the millionaire realm. As we drove back to the mansion in the soft glow of the evening, I felt the weight of this new knowledge settle on me. I understood, perhaps for the first time, that millionaires don't just buy lavish things for the sake of it. Many view their world through a lens of investment, strategic positioning, and personal growth, even if that growth includes intangible factors like confidence and brand image. Still, I had to ask, is this always healthy? Does living in a world of constant optimization and strategic thinking ever exhaust a person? And where does the pure joy factor come in? The childlike delight of buying something purely because it makes you happy? I made a mental note to ask Adrian about that later. For now, I let myself enjoy the ride, literally and metaphorically. After all, if this week was about understanding the many facets of wealth, it was crucial to immerse myself without judgment. And with the day's experiences fresh in my mind, I was ready to dive even deeper into the strategies, the challenges, and the emotional underpinnings of living like a millionaire. Morning light streamed through the windows as I sank into a leather chair in Adrian's study. The room was a sanctuary of polished wood, lined with shelves of business books and personal memoirs from world-renowned entrepreneurs. The scent of rich coffee hung in the air, courtesy of Simone's expertly brewed espresso. I was about to embark on a deep dive into the mindset that Adrian and his peers cultivate, one that, as he insisted, held the key to thriving in a world of vast wealth and enormous responsibility. I started our conversation with a pressing question. We've talked about risk and investment, but what about day-to-day thinking patterns? What separates a millionaire's mindset from someone just getting by? Adrian leaned back, a thoughtful look crossing his face. One major difference is a focus on value creation rather than just income. People often chase higher paychecks or job promotions. Wealthy individuals, on the other hand, look for ways to create value that scales. A job promotion might add thousands to your annual salary, but launching a product or service that solves a real-world problem can generate millions, or even billions. He opened a drawer and pulled out a leather-bound notebook, flipping to a page filled with sketches and scribbles. This is where I jot down ideas. Some are half-baked, others are quite detailed. The point is, I don't dismiss a concept because it seems too lofty. I entertain the possibility that it could be huge. The lesson resonated. Millionaires see possibility in places others see barriers. They ask, how can I scale this? How can I multiply its impact? Rather than, is this safe enough to maintain my current lifestyle? That shift in perspective, thinking beyond the comfort zone, seems to be a hallmark of wealth building. Our discussion then moved to time management. Adrian explained that millionaires often have a meticulous approach to scheduling. I don't treat my calendar like a to-do list, he said, tapping on his watch. I treat it like an investment portfolio. Every hour is an asset I allocate to high-value tasks, whether it's strategizing a new venture, nurturing important relationships, or yes, even taking time off to recharge. Downtime is essential, but it's intentional downtime, not aimless procrastination. I flashed back to my old routines, scrolling through social media for an hour, or binge-watching TV shows because I felt too drained after work. Sure, relaxation is important, but how often had I used it as an escape rather than a purposeful reboot? Adrian's approach offered a more disciplined yet ultimately more liberating way to manage life's most limited resource, time. He next touched on personal development. Continuous learning is non-negotiable. Many millionaires read relentlessly, not just for pleasure but to gain new insights, stay ahead of market trends, or explore new skill sets. Warren Buffett famously reads hundreds of pages every day. Bill Gates takes weeks away from the office to delve into books and research. The moment you think you know enough is the moment you start falling behind. I mulled over that point. My own reading habits were sporadic, limited to best-selling novels or an occasional biography. Yet here were some of the world's wealthiest individuals, dedicating a chunk of their schedule to unstructured learning, feeding their minds the way others might feed their bodies at mealtime. Finally, Adrian circled back to relationships. I can't emphasize enough the power of the right network. When you're surrounded by high-achieving, forward-thinking individuals, it accelerates your own growth. But it's not just about collecting powerful friends. It's about sharing ideas, collaborating on ventures, and supporting each other's visions. True networks are built on reciprocal value, not transactional exchange. He paused, letting the words settle in. I thought about my own social circle, mostly people at my office or friends from college. While I cherished those friendships, I realized I rarely branched out to meet people who challenged me intellectually or professionally. Perhaps that was the next step, seeking out environments that would stretch my thinking and push me to explore bigger goals. By the time we finished our discussion, my notebook was overflowing with phrases like value creation, scale impact, intentional downtime, and reciprocal network. It felt like a treasure map, each clue guiding me toward a fuller understanding of how to live, not just spend, the kind of wealth that Adrian had. Yet I also recognized an undercurrent. Being a millionaire or billionaire isn't merely a constant celebration of luxury. It's a demanding lifestyle that requires relentless drive, strategic thinking, and emotional resilience. I left Adrian's study with a renewed sense of purpose. My head buzzed with ideas about how I could apply these principles. How can I create value in my own career? Which tasks or projects truly deserve my time? Am I surrounding myself with people who help me grow? Each question hovered in the air, challenging me to take action rather than remain a passive observer. As I stepped outside, the midday sun illuminated the mansion's immaculate gardens. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear Simone's cheerful voice, probably discussing lunch plans with the rest of the staff. A tiny part of me still felt like I was living in a fairy tale, albeit one with a very real set of guiding principles behind it. The day was far from over. Next on the agenda was a trip to a local entrepreneur summit, where Adrian would be speaking about scaling businesses. It was a front-row seat to watch the millionaire mindset in action, and I intended to soak up every word. More importantly, I realized this immersive week wasn't just an educational detour. It was an invitation to redefine my own boundaries, to see myself as capable of more than I ever thought. The question now was whether I had the courage to follow through once the week was over. Because mindset wasn't something you could buy. It had to be built day by day, choice by choice, risk by risk. The day's final stop was a grand ballroom in a high-end hotel where the Entrepreneur Summit was in full swing. Picture a bustling crowd of ambitious individuals, startup founders, angel investors, marketing gurus, all milling around, exchanging business cards like currency. The air crackled with excitement, thick with the promise of new ventures and groundbreaking ideas. It was networking at its highest level, and Adrian was the keynote speaker. As we stepped inside, a hush spread across the room. Whispers of recognition followed Adrian's entrance. A moderator guided us to front-row seats while Adrian was whisked backstage. I settled in, flipping through the summit's agenda, scanning panel topics like scaling your startup and future of AI. Each session buzzed with opportunities for collaboration and investment. Soon, Adrian took the stage, greeted by thunderous applause. With his customary poise, he dove into a presentation on the importance of innovation in scaling a business from local to global. I'd heard some of his ideas before in private settings, but seeing him captivate an audience of hundreds was a different experience altogether. He spoke about pivoting quickly in response to market feedback, about creating a company culture that fosters original thinking, and about strategic funding that propels businesses to new heights without diluting their core vision. At one point, he emphasized the role of mentorship and networking. "No successful entrepreneur does it alone," Adrian said. "We thrive by sharing resources, introducing each other to key contacts, and sometimes even co-developing solutions that push industries forward." It clicked for me then. The millionaire lifestyle he'd been teaching me wasn't just about personal gain. It also involved contributing to an ecosystem of growth, where each success story fueled another. Once the speech ended, the audience erupted in applause. Adrian's talk had struck a chord, leaving a tangible buzz in the air. People surged forward, eager to shake his hand or pitch him an idea. I tried to keep up, hovering at the edge of animated circles as founders told their stories, pitched proposals, and sought guidance. It was exhilarating to see Adrian's mind at work. He'd quickly assess each concept, offer insights or encouragement, and sometimes even schedule follow-up meetings. A young entrepreneur with a tech startup approached me, perhaps mistaking me for an investor. He was brimming with enthusiasm for his new app, explaining how it could revolutionize local commerce. Though I wasn't in a position to fund anything, I engaged him in conversation, curious about his passion. That's when it occurred to me. People flock to these events not only for money, but also for alignment with like-minded individuals who share their drive and vision. Wealth building in this sphere was as much about forging strategic relationships as it was about securing capital. After a whirlwind of conversations, we headed to a private lounge for a brief respite. Sinking into a cushy armchair, I exhaled in amazement. "This entire summit is an ecosystem," I marveled. "Everyone is here to learn, share, and possibly form alliances. It's like a living, breathing network of opportunity." Adrian nodded, sipping a glass of water. "Precisely. This is how millionaires continue to grow. They don't hoard knowledge or resources, they circulate them. Every introduction could lead to the next big breakthrough." I took a moment to absorb the scene. Entrepreneurs buzzing around, exchanging ideas as though each handshake might spark the next big success. It was a stark contrast from many conventional workplaces I'd experienced, where information was guarded and competition overshadowed collaboration. Here, the energy was more akin to a community barn raising, except the barns were billion-dollar ventures. After the summit, we returned to the mansion. The drive back gave me time to reflect on how millionaires build their lifestyles. Yes, they leverage capital to buy extravagant homes or charter private jets, but the real building blocks seem to be collaboration, strategic thinking, and a willingness to take bold leaps. Luxury is a byproduct, not the core driving force. The driving force is innovation, community, and continual growth, an ecosystem rather than an isolated tower of wealth. Back at the mansion, I got a quick update from Simone on dinner plans. Tonight's menu featured pan-seared scallops and a vegan dessert option, because she'd remembered I was curious about a healthier sweet treat. I changed into more comfortable attire and wandered into the expansive living area, finding Adrian reviewing notes on his tablet. Even after a high-stakes summit, he was still fine-tuning his strategies, emailing potential collaborators, and mapping out the next steps for various projects. I couldn't help but admire his stamina. "Don't you ever switch off?" I asked with a half-teasing smile, but there was genuine concern in my voice. He looked up, understanding my question. "I do, but intentionally. I set aside blocks of time, mini vacations or weekends where I really disconnect. That's another aspect of the millionaire lifestyle, controlling your schedule. For the rest of this month, I'm in growth mode. Then, I plan a retreat to recharge." I recalled our earlier talk about time being the ultimate currency. Adrian was demonstrating exactly that, managing his calendar like a well-balanced portfolio. It struck me that building a millionaire lifestyle wasn't a one-size-fits-all blueprint, but a method of continually optimizing choices to match your goals, health, relationships, and passions. With each passing day, the puzzle pieces of this life were coming into sharper focus. It wasn't just about the money to spend, but rather about how that money could accelerate meaningful opportunities, both for oneself and for others. And while it looked effortless from the outside, the reality involved a lot of meticulous planning, emotional resilience, and deeply rooted values. By the time we sat down for dinner, I felt both inspired and somewhat daunted. Could I ever truly adopt these principles? The discipline, the risk management, the visionary thinking. It was all so new, so different from my steady 9-to-5 existence. Yet, that small voice inside me urged me forward, reminding me that this week wasn't about becoming a carbon copy of Adrian. It was about learning the tools and philosophies that could empower me to build my own version of success. We clinked glasses, celebrating the day's events and looking ahead to tomorrow's schedule, which included property tours and, if time allowed, a bit of relaxation by the infinity pool. I felt a surge of gratitude that this was my life, at least for the moment. Even if I chose to return to a simpler lifestyle later, I would do so armed with the knowledge and confidence gained here. That, I realized, was the real value of this entire experience, the ability to choose how to live, backed by newfound clarity and vision. I woke up the next morning feeling a peculiar mix of excitement and fatigue. The excitement came from the property tour scheduled for later in the day, an opportunity to see how millionaires often invest in real estate. The fatigue, however, was the result of my mind running in circles all night. I'd been mulling over the sheer magnitude of this lifestyle and the countless moving parts that come with it. It wasn't all private jets and personal chefs. It was an unrelenting focus on opportunity, scalability, and risk-taking, and that, I realized, could be exhausting. As I stepped into the gleaming kitchen, Simone greeted me with her usual sunny disposition. "Breakfast options?" she asked, holding a small notepad. A wave of guilt hit me. This was a privilege beyond measure, to have someone else manage my meals so meticulously. Yet I felt the need to politely decline. "Just a simple yogurt and some fruit, please," I said. "I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed." She nodded sympathetically. "Of course. Let me know if you need anything more." With that, she began assembling a nutritious platter, leaving me space to think. Over the last few days, I'd soared through experiences most people only dream about. But with each new luxury, each new business insight, my inner equilibrium felt a bit off-kilter. I was juggling not only an external transformation, learning about investments, networking, lifestyle choices, but also an internal one, reconciling my ordinary past with this extraordinary present. Once I finished breakfast, Adrian and I headed out for the property tour. Our first stop was a sprawling estate on the outskirts of the city. The exterior boasted classical architecture, columns, manicured lawns, a cobblestone driveway, while the interior seamlessly blended old-world charm with modern conveniences. As we walked through the spacious halls, Adrian explained the property's income potential as a luxury rental venue. Wealthy individuals frequently purchase estates like these not just for personal use, but also to generate revenue through events or short-term rentals, he noted, pointing out the large ballroom and picturesque gardens perfect for weddings. Yet, as grand and beautiful as the estate was, a sense of detachment nagged at me. "Would we ever actually live here?" I asked, struggling to see how one could enjoy such a place if it was constantly rented out or booked for events. Adrian shrugged. "That's the trade-off. Sometimes you own properties you don't spend much time in, but they're part of a larger investment portfolio. It's about diversifying assets and ensuring steady cash flow. For me, it's not just about sentiment, it's about long-term returns." His pragmatic stance made sense from an investment perspective. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that owning multiple lavish properties might dilute the joy of each. I tried to picture myself returning for an anniversary or a holiday gathering, only to find the property had become more of a business asset than a home. It dawned on me that not all aspects of the millionaire lifestyle would align perfectly with my personal values or desires for how to build a sense of home. As the tour continued, we visited a chic penthouse downtown, complete with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the skyline. This place at least felt more livable to me, a luxurious but modern space that could easily become someone's primary residence. Adrian pointed out the potential for it to appreciate over time, especially with the city's growing tech sector. Even if you don't live here forever, the resale or rental value can be substantial, he explained. By mid-afternoon, we'd seen 4 very different properties, each with its own appeal and investment proposition. My mind buzzed with numbers, market trends, potential returns, maintenance costs. I admired how Adrian evaluated each property like a puzzle piece, fitting it into his broader wealth-building strategy. At the same time, I recognized a critical adjustment anyone in this position would have to make, balancing financial logic with emotional well-being. Back at the mansion, I felt drained. The staff had prepared a lavish lunch spread, but my appetite was minimal. Adrian noticed my quiet mood. "Hey," he said gently, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You've been absorbing a lot. Let's talk." We settled in the cozy library, far from the bustle of staff and visitors. The room smelled of leather-bound volumes and polished wood. I took a deep breath, trying to formulate my thoughts. "I'm fascinated by everything I'm learning," I began slowly. "But I'm also realizing that wealth on this scale requires constant upkeep, managing investments, properties, staff, businesses. It's like a machine that always needs oil. Do you ever feel overwhelmed?" Adrian sighed, leaning forward. "Absolutely. There are days I wonder if life was simpler when I had less. But I've come to see that true happiness doesn't stem from money. It stems from aligning your wealth with your values. If you love building businesses and investing, this lifestyle energizes you. If you don't, it can become a gilded cage." His words struck a chord. "So it's not about replicating your lifestyle," I said. "It's about finding a way of life that aligns with who I am, using the same principles but on my own scale." He nodded. "Exactly. Not everyone is built to manage multiple properties or run a large investment portfolio. Some people may prefer fewer assets but a higher quality of life in other areas, like travel, philanthropy, or creative pursuits. It's about choice, and that's what wealth fundamentally provides: freedom to choose how you live." Relief washed over me. It was the permission I needed to realize that I didn't have to emulate every facet of a billionaire's life to be successful or fulfilled. The intense focus on return on investment, the ceaseless search for new ventures, it was exhilarating but also exhausting. Maybe my path would involve a more modest approach, still applying the lessons of value creation, time management, and strategic networking, but without the pressure to constantly scale up. As we left the library, I felt lighter. Sure, I was immersed in this extravagant world for a week, but I was beginning to see how it might translate into my real life, on my terms. This was one of the biggest adjustments I'd faced so far, recognizing that wealth is a tool, not an identity. And like any tool, it should be used in a way that serves who you are and what you believe in. The next morning, I woke with a renewed sense of direction. My conversation with Adrian had granted me a sense of calm, the freedom to understand that my journey didn't have to mirror his in every detail. No one was handing me a How to Be a Billionaire instruction manual and demanding I follow it verbatim. This was about gleaning the principles that resonated with me: mindset, value creation, strategic investment, and finding a way to mold them into a life that felt authentically mine. To that end, I decided to spend the early part of the day in reflection, journaling in the sunroom that overlooked the mansion's gardens. I wrote down the lessons I found most impactful. Time as currency. Treat each hour as an investment, allocating it purposefully to work, relationships, or rejuvenation. Value creation. Over income. Instead of chasing a higher salary, focus on creating products, services, or content that can scale. Networking and collaboration. Seek out environments and people who challenge and inspire me, rather than stagnate in familiar circles. Strategic risk-taking. Don't fear failure. Use it as a stepping stone to refine ideas. Authentic alignment. Wealth should serve my values, not override them. Reading back over these points, I felt a surge of enthusiasm. My life might never feature personal chefs, private jets, or a staff of housekeepers, and that was okay. But I could integrate these core philosophies to elevate my own success and sense of purpose. Eventually, I joined Adrian for a casual brunch in a smaller dining area, a sunlit corner surrounded by glass walls that let the outdoors in. Over omelets and fresh juice, I shared my reflections. "I'm getting clearer about what I want and don't want," I told him. "The wealth you have, it's impressive. But I don't want to lose the simplicity I value in day-to-day life." He smiled, nodding in understanding. "I was waiting for you to reach that conclusion. Everyone assumes that once you have money, you have to live a certain way. But remember, wealth is about freedom of choice. Some of my peers live even more lavishly than I do. Others keep a low profile, funneling most of their resources into charities or research. It's all about individual priorities. We spent the rest of the morning discussing personal projects I might pursue when this immersive week ended. Adrian posed questions that helped me crystallize my thoughts. What skills do I already possess? Which industries or issues spark my passion? How could I position myself to offer something of high value, either as a business or a side venture? The conversation felt less like a lecture and more like a brainstorming session with a mentor who genuinely wanted me to succeed on my own terms. By midday, we drifted outside to the expansive infinity pool. I had a rare block of unscheduled time, a luxury in itself, and decided to take a swim. Sliding into the cool water, I gazed at the panoramic view of rolling hills and distant city lights. It was the perfect setting for quiet contemplation, the kind you rarely get when stuck in a routine of 9-to-5 responsibilities and weekend chores. As I floated on my back, I realized how much my priorities had shifted in just a few days. Before this week, I equated wealth mostly with material abundance: houses, cars, designer outfits. Now I saw it as a layered concept, where tangible luxuries were only one aspect. The rest encompassed time freedom, creative energy, philanthropic choices, and personal growth. Adrian's brand of mentorship extended far beyond showing me how millionaires spend money. It showed me how they allocate resources, financial, emotional, intellectual, to create a life that's both profitable and meaningful. Later in the afternoon, I made a phone call to a close friend, someone who'd known me long before I met Adrian. I hesitated to share every detail, wary of sounding boastful or alien, but I found myself explaining the core ideas that had reshaped my perspective. She listened intently, then said something that stuck. It's amazing how we cling to a single notion of success, usually tied to job stability or a certain salary, when there are so many ways to find fulfillment. Maybe this experience is opening you up to new possibilities. Her words rang true. I no longer saw a single linear path to success. Instead, it branched in multiple directions, some leading to the kind of life Adrian had, others leading to a more modest yet still purposeful existence. The point wasn't to replicate Adrian's journey, but to craft my own, using the millionaire mindset as a powerful set of tools. That evening, as we dined on a terrace illuminated by lanterns, I felt a sense of resolve. My experiment in living like a millionaire was nearing its end, and soon I'd step back into my more typical routines. But I wouldn't be the same person who started this journey. My priorities, time, growth, aligned values, had taken root in my mind. I was eager to see how I could fuse them into a life that felt more expansive, more me, without necessarily adopting every extravagance that came with wealth on Adrian's scale. I clinked my glass with Adrian's, meeting his warm gaze. In that shared moment, I silently thanked him for the lessons and for giving me the freedom to form my own path. I might not chase $1 billion, but I'd certainly chase the wisdom, focus, and vision that underpins it. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift I could ever receive. The final full day of my immersion began quietly. I woke early, slipping out of the plush bedding and padding downstairs to the veranda with a cup of coffee in hand. The mansion was still, the staff not yet bustling about. I could see the last of the moon hanging in the pastel dawn sky, a lingering hint of night yielding to the possibility of day. It felt symbolic of my own transition, from an observer of this lifestyle to someone who'd gleaned practical insights I could carry forward. I found a comfortable chaise lounge and settled in, letting the cool morning air perk me up. The week had been a whirlwind of firsts: private jets, exclusive shopping experiences, intense investment discussions, and property tours that spanned architectural eras. Yet, if someone asked me to name the most valuable part of this entire journey, it wouldn't be the tangible luxuries. It would be the underlying principles Adrian so patiently explained. Mindset is everything. At its core, the millionaire mindset isn't about flaunting wealth, but about seeing opportunities where others see limits. It's about innovation, strategic thinking, and the willingness to act decisively. Time and relationships as currency. Money can be replenished, but time is finite. Millionaires place a premium on allocating time wisely, whether to productive work, strategic investments, or quality moments with family. Similarly, they nurture relationships that foster growth, collaboration, and mutual support. Invest in growth. From personal development to financial investments, there's a consistent theme of reinvesting. Adrian underscored how important it is to keep learning, stay curious, and constantly find ways to add more value to your own life and to others. Authentic alignment. Perhaps the most pivotal lesson for me personally was that wealth is a tool, not an identity. It should serve who you are and what you believe in, not define it. Just as the sun began to crest the horizon, I felt someone approach. Adrian appeared, also nursing a cup of coffee. He took a seat beside me, and for a while we watched the sky transform in companionable silence. Eventually he spoke. "Tomorrow, your official Millionaire week ends. How are you feeling?" I offered a soft laugh, gazing at him. Relieved, grateful, inspired, and more than a little tired. He chuckled, nodding in understanding. "That's a pretty standard combination. I'm curious, what's your biggest takeaway?" I sipped my coffee, choosing my words carefully. I used to think being wealthy was about living in luxury, having a staff, and buying expensive things. But now I see those are just byproducts. The real wealth lies in being able to do what you want with your time, to invest in ideas that excite you, and to share resources that elevate yourself and others. And crucially, you have to stay true to yourself in the process. Adrian smiled, looking almost proud. That's more than many people realize in a lifetime. He then reminded me of the importance of consistent action beyond this week. Don't let these lessons slip away once you're back in your routine. Integrate them gradually. Start with small investments, cultivate new relationships, and practice mindful time management. Wealth building is a marathon, not a sprint. I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. Suddenly, the thought of returning to normal life wasn't daunting. It was exciting. I had a mental toolbox at my disposal, full of strategies and mindsets I could apply to my own goals. Whether I aimed for a 7-figure bank account or a more modest sum, the principles would guide me just the same. Later that day, I decided to record a short video, my own final reflection, to share with friends and followers who'd been keeping tabs on my week of opulence. I set up my phone on the veranda, framing the mansion's pool and gardens in the background, and hit record. "Hey everyone," I began, trying to keep my tone both excited and genuine. "I'm wrapping up my week of living like a millionaire, mentored by none other than my billionaire husband. And let me tell you, it's been eye-opening in ways I never expected. Yes, I flew on a private jet, stayed in a jaw-dropping mansion, and had a personal chef cook all my meals. But the real takeaway? Mindset. It's about how you view time, opportunity, and relationships. You don't need to be a billionaire to apply these lessons. You just need the willingness to see yourself as capable of more. The biggest shift for me? Realizing that money is a tool, not the end game. It should serve your dreams, not overshadow who you are. Thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned for my future updates. I've got a lot more to share." When I finished, I felt a flutter in my stomach, a mixture of vulnerability and excitement. But I was ready to let the world know about this transformative experience and hopefully inspire anyone watching to reevaluate their own relationship with wealth and success. That evening, Adrian and I shared a simple dinner. Candles flickered on the table, the staff giving us space to enjoy our last official night of the experiment. The conversation flowed effortlessly, ranging from future travel plans to potential business ideas I might pursue. I felt closer to him than ever, not because of the glamorous week we'd spent, but because I'd gained a deeper appreciation for the philosophies and values that shaped his life. As I climbed into bed, the realization washed over me. This week had been a kind of initiation, guiding me to see beyond my preconceived notions of wealth. The real journey was just beginning, one that would continue well after I left this mansion. The spark of possibility was there. Now it was up to me to fan it into a flame. Early the next morning, the week officially concluded. I stood by the grand entrance, suitcase in hand, taking one last look at the sweeping staircase and the gleaming marble floors. It was a bittersweet moment. Part of me felt reluctant to leave the cozy luxury, the staff who had become friendly faces, and the daily jolt of excitement that came from being immersed in a billionaire's world. But a bigger part of me was ready, eager to re-enter my own life with new insights and fresh resolve. Adrian appeared, looking both relaxed and energized. He offered me a warm embrace. "I'm proud of you," he said. "You didn't just go through the motions. You absorbed the lessons, asked tough questions, and found your own perspective. That's exactly what I hoped would happen." I blinked back a tear, feeling a rush of gratitude. "Thank you for this experience, and for trusting me to find my own way through it. I promise I won't take any of it for granted." With that, I stepped into the waiting SUV, a final nod to the lifestyle I'd been immersed in. The drive back to the airport felt surreal, almost as though I were returning from a parallel dimension. Yet this wasn't the end, merely a transition. I felt a charge of excitement at the thought of implementing what I'd learned, of seeing how these millionaire principles could reshape my day-to-day life, my career, my relationships. Upon boarding my flight, a commercial one this time but still comfortable, I found myself smiling at the contrast. No private jet, no exclusive lounge, just ordinary people boarding with their carry-ons, hoping to find overhead bin space. And yet, I felt every bit as purposeful as when I was soaring on Adrian's jet. Because now, I wasn't chasing a fantasy. I was living with a newfound sense of clarity and determination. Over the next few weeks, I began to integrate the most meaningful lessons from my millionaire immersion. Invest in myself. I signed up for online courses to deepen my skills, particularly in areas like digital marketing and entrepreneurship. Value-focused projects. Rather than aim for a promotion at my existing job, I started developing a side project I'd been dreaming about, a creative consulting service for small businesses. Community building. I attended local entrepreneur meetups, leveraging the networking insights Adrian had imparted. I realized that forming authentic connections opened doors in ways I'd never experienced before. Conscious spending. Sure, I treated myself occasionally, but I also reconsidered my budget, cutting out mindless expenses and diverting more funds into savings and investments. Mindset maintenance. I revisited my notes and reflections daily, reminding myself that success is a mindset, one that requires continuous nurturing. Your own path to success. As you followed this story, I hope you've gleaned that living like a millionaire isn't solely about external trappings. It's about adopting a mindset that values time, focuses on opportunities, and dares to invest in both yourself and your ideas. Whether you have $100 in your bank account or $100,000, these principles can be adapted to scale. Ask yourself, what is one area of your life, be it career, relationships, or personal development, where you can apply the millionaire mindset? Maybe it's setting aside dedicated time each day for a passion project. Maybe it's enrolling in that course you've been eyeing. Perhaps it's cutting out a detrimental habit to free up energy for bigger goals. The key is to start. Don't wait for perfect conditions or unlimited funds. The mindset always comes before the money. If this story has inspired or challenged you, I invite you to take the first step right now. Subscribe. Stay connected for more insights and personal anecdotes about my ongoing journey. Comment, share your thoughts, or ask a question. What intrigues you most about the millionaire lifestyle? What's one mindset shift you're committed to making? Share. If you found value in these reflections, pass them along. You never know who else might need a nudge to see their own potential.